If you're wanting maximum FPS as well as the clearest visibility possible to dominate in Warzone, Ranked Play, and DMZ, then these are the best settings that you need to be following exactly in Season 3 Reloaded. Starting off with display mode. Full screen exclusive is what I'd recommend everyone run here. It gives you the lowest latency possible. It's not really anything to do with FPS, but overall you'll have less stutters and all your input will feel a lot better. Full screen borderless does give you a bit of a quicker alt tab, which is nice, but for those of us who are tryharding and trying to get better at the game, full screen exclusive is a must. Then display monitor and display adapter. These just both need to be set to the correct monitor, and the correct GPU in your system should be set at this already. Screen refresh rate, you should just be able to set this at auto and it will automatically select the refresh rate of your monitor, but just check that it lines up. Same thing goes for the display resolution. You don't want to be downscaling or upscaling in here to any different resolutions. Just select your native resolution. Leave dynamic resolution off and aspect ratio at automatic. Then turn off both of the VSync options. This adds a lot of input lag, which feels really terrible to play with. It's going to make all of your inputs feel like they have that little bit of delay before they happen, so VSync off, very, very important. Custom frame rate limit, don't use unlimited. Instead, put this to custom, then select show more, and change your gameplay custom frame rate limit to just above whatever your refresh rate of your monitor is. I've got it set to 250 because I'm running at a 244 Hz monitor. If you were on a 144 Hz monitor, which I know a lot of people are, I'd recommend probably 150 here. Then menu custom frame rate limit, put this to about 120, maybe minimum 100. This is going to mean that you have a nice smooth moving menu when you're doing your custom classes. When you're in the firing range as well, you're going to still have a decent amount of FPS, but your system isn't just being overloaded trying to shove as much FPS into the menu when it doesn't need to. And then the same thing goes for out of focus custom frame rate limit. Just put this all the way down at something like 30. This means that if you do alt tab out and you want to go and maybe check a YouTube video for a class that you're trying to create, you're not going to be having the game hogging a load of resources and potentially lagging the rest of your system. Then display gamma, set this to 2.2 if you are on a PC monitor like I am, and set it to 2.4 if you're on a TV. We then want to change our brightness to 55. That 5 boost from the default of 50 helps out with a lot of visibility in some of those darker areas on Ashika Island and Al Mazrah. And the final thing in here, HDR. Even if you have a monitor or TV that supports HDR, it's not helpful for visibility. It's better for those single player games where you want to get some nice contrast and nice lighting. But for Warzone, a competitive multiplayer game, you want to keep it off. Now moving on to the quality tab, quality presets, just leave this at custom. It's going to be set to custom by default when we change everything else anyway. Render resolution, leave this at 100%. Then upscaling and sharpening. I've had a lot to say on this on a lot of my older videos. Now, I would only recommend one of two options. If you're looking for the best visibility, and you don't really need loads of extra FPS because you're on maybe a lower system, just run FidelityFX CAS. I used to recommend potentially turning this off and running some NVIDIA sharpening, which I will still leave a link to in the description of how you can actually make the game even sharper on top of this. But this doesn't seem to be using up anywhere near the performance it used to. You just want to set FidelityFX CAS and turn the CAS strength up to, I'd just say around 75 is a good starting point. That doesn't look overly sharp to me. If you're instead just looking for an FPS boost and you really need all the FPS you can get, try out AMD FSR 2.1 with the quality setting. What this is actually doing is it's going to be downscaling your resolution down to, you know, if I'm on 1440p, maybe it's going down to something like 1080p, so it's going to give me some FPS because of that, but then it upscale it back to what looks like 1440p basically, so it still looks just as sharp, but I gain a lot of FPS. I don't need to run this, however, so currently I am running FidelityFX CAS, and that's what I'd recommend for most people who don't need that extra FPS. Anti-aliasing quality, this is another interesting one. I used to always recommend Filmic SMAAT2X because SMAAT2X had this really bad grainy texture that it put on pretty much every object in the game. That seems to be overall a bit better now. So if you need FPS and you just care about FPS, which I know a lot of you guys do, just put this on SMAA, you don't need the Filmic. If you find that the SMAA still looks too grainy for you in game, well, just come back in here, turn this up, you will lose a bit of FPS, not too much, but you will get a cleaner image, so pick your poison. Then for anti-aliasing quality, I recommend you put this at normal. It looks a lot better than the low setting, like a hell of a lot better, way less jagged, way more clean, but you don't get any of the performance drops you really get from running high or ultra quality, so it's a good balance of visuals and performance. Then video memory scale, still a load of people running this at max, thinking it's going to give them an FPS boost. Not the case. This doesn't even affect FPS really. What it does do is affect how much your game stutters and how overloaded your system is when trying to run the game. It can even cause some of those crashing errors that you have that can ruin your ranked games and DMZ games when you've got really good loot. So what you actually should do as a starting point is put it at around 70. If you are running a medium to high build, you can start dropping this down to maybe 60 or even 50, which I run at. I've got a 3090, but even when I was running my 3070 GPU, I was still running this at 50, and it gave me the lowest amount of stuttering and FPS drops. If you're running anything lower than a 3070, maybe come up to that 60 or that 70 mark, but I wouldn't go anywhere above that. For the texture resolution, this is going to be similar to the anti-aliasing quality above. You want to select the second to lowest option because low looks way better than very low, but you don't lose out on a bunch of performance that you do from running normal or high. So once again, it's a good balance and it still looks considerably better than very low. Texture filter and isotropic, we can leave this at high. It helps out with how textures look when we're looking at them from a non-direct angle. So like this ground over here where we're looking at it from an angle, just makes the texture look overall cleaner, and it has no effect on FPS for 95% of players. Then nearby level of detail and distant level of detail, put these both to low. They sound like important settings. It sounds like it's gonna, set the quality of objects, or maybe things are gonna blend in or something. No, it doesn't seem to do much at all really. There's very few scenarios you actually see this change the visibility or the visuals of the game, but you do get a nice little performance boost from turning them down. Clutter draw distance, we're not going to worry about that now because we're going to be setting it in a config file that I will cover after I've shown you all of these settings in-game, where we're going to basically put it shorter than the short setting, and it's going to give us a nice performance boost, a really nice performance boost. Then particle quality and particle quality level, both of these, you can put them on their lowest. It's all to do with how fire, explosions, and things like the thermite in the example here, how they look. We don't really care how these look. This does make them look terrible in game, but they are a bit of an FPS hog when they go off. When an explosion goes off, you can start losing 10 FPS. We don't want that to happen, so turn these to low and very low. Bullet impacts, personal preference, I like to leave them on because we're playing a shooter and bullet impacts are cool. But persistent damage layers, which is essentially like bullet impacts, but it's more to do with the marks that are left on the ground when explosions go off, those big kind of dark areas and dark patches on walls. Those I actually like to keep off. It says it has a medium effect on VRAM. I haven't seen a huge amount of FPS variation from turning this on and off, but it will keep the overall landscape of what you're looking at a lot cleaner, a lot clearer, and should help visibility. Shader quality is a setting that you have to run at low. This just absolutely kills your FPS when you have this any higher. It affects how the quality of lighting is on certain surfaces, specifically your guns. This actually used to make your camos look terrible. So a lot of people used to run this at medium and lose a bit of FPS just so their game looked a bit nicer, but they fixed that now. So even if you are someone who loves their camos and doesn't want to ruin their camos, you can run this at low. There's no problem with it now. Then tessellation doesn't actually have much effect on performance, but I like to leave it off. I just don't think it's necessary. It adds a bit more detail and structure to the landscape, but it's not something you're ever really going to notice, so any amount of FPS we can gain from it, you may as well. Then on-demand texture streaming doesn't sound good to me. Why would you want to download high-quality textures while you're playing? There's already problems with servers and lag. Yeah, just keep this off. It's not something that we ever really want to touch. Streaming quality, we can put this at low as well because it doesn't seem to do anything. It kind of has an effect on how objects look really far away, like the distant level of detail we covered earlier. But once again, not many scenarios you ever notice a difference visually. Volumetric quality, like shader quality, needs to be at low. It's another one of the big FPS dropping settings that you can have if you start turning this up. It does make the game look a little bit nicer, a little bit more cinematic, but in Warzone, as a competitive multiplayer game, we don't need these god rays and this nice looking fog, so turn this low. Deferred physics quality and water quality affect how water looks in the game. You need to put these at their lowest settings, so off and default. There is a lot of water in this game, and you'll find that if you're in areas that are even just slightly near the water, areas like port or areas near the river that runs through the Al Mazrah map and on Ashika Island by the sea and everything, you get considerable FPS drops, even when you have these on off and on default. It's probably something they need to try and fix, but this minimizes the drop you get, so make sure you've got these at off and at default. Shadow map resolution is exactly like texture resolution, where we want to put it at low rather than very low. Very low looks terrible, low looks about twice as good, and you gain a bit of FPS from it. As soon as you start going higher than low, you get diminishing returns in terms of your visuals, but you start losing a lot of FPS. So leave this at low, and then screen space shadows, we can turn them off because we don't care about them. Spot shadow quality, we can turn those to low because it kind of goes with shadow resolution. We don't really care about having loads of shadows everywhere, so keep it low. And then spot cache, you actually leave this at ultra. You know, we were on a bit of a roll of turning everything off, but no. It seems that by setting this to ultra, you're essentially giving the biggest cache size possible to store potential shadows and bits and pieces that the game might need in the future, and in those situations it would render them back in and cause a lot of stuttering. Well, we're giving it a big cache size and it can just load them back in. So yeah, leave this at ultra and it'll give you a nice performance boost. Particle lighting, you can drop that down to low because it's another setting we don't really care much about. And ambient occlusion off, very, very, very important one. This does make the game look considerably more flat, almost 2D at certain points, because it removes a lot of the realistic shadows that you get from areas in corners where objects meet, like down by this forklift. But that actually overall improves your visibility in game because there's less little areas where people with some of those darker skins might be able to hide in. So yeah, definitely keep this one off. For the last three settings in this area, they're all things we don't care about: reflections and how weather looks in game. Just turn these to the lowest setting, whether that be off or low. NVIDIA Reflex Low Latency, you definitely don't want to have this off, but should you be using on or on plus boost? Well, as it says over here, on plus boost is good at keeping GPU clock frequencies high in CPU bound cases. So if you are on a system where your CPU is maybe weaker than your GPU, which happens for a lot of gamers. You know, we put a CPU in the system that just does the job, but really we're having our GPU carry the system. In that scenario, you guys want to be running on plus boost. However, for anyone who has a GPU and a CPU that are kind of evenly matched and you haven't skimped down a CPU, or maybe you have a CPU that's stronger than your GPU. Maybe you use your PC for all kinds of like rendering tasks and stuff, and you just happen to have a weaker GPU. Well, in that scenario, on will be better. If you don't know which one is the situation you're in, then just try them both out and see which one gives you the best overall feeling in game and better FPS. And then the remaining settings on here you want to have off. Depth of field and motion blur and stuff like that is not good. The only one which can help some people is weapon motion blur. Some people find that this actually lowers the amount of stuttering at the beginning of the game. It looks terrible when you play with it, weapon motion blur. It's not a nice looking thing, but some people have to run it to avoid all the lag they get when they parachute in and when the plane's coming in. It seems to be fixed for most people, so they can turn it off, but that is a little fix if you need it. And then the last area of the graphics, the view area, field of view, I'd recommend that you still run this at max. Some people prefer running it at 110 because they find that it actually helps a bit with visibility. I've still been recommending you run at 120 just to get the maximum amount of vision possible. ADS field of view, however, is not personal preference. Please run this at affected. It should be done by default, but what this does is it means that when you have a wider field of view set here, you maintain a decently wide field of view when you scope in with your gun, and this helps with visual recoil a ton because you're not scoped in so far on the gun, and when it shakes it doesn't look like it shakes as much and you can stay on target a lot easier. Weapon field of view, I've still been running this at wide. I like how it looks. I like my gun being a bit further away, but this is honestly personal preference. Try each of these out and see which one you like the most. Third person field of view, don't care about. Third person doesn't even seem to be in the game most of the time anyway, so put this to whatever you want. And then vehicle field of view, yeah, I'd put this at wide as well, so that when you're in a car or in a helicopter, you get more view of the area around you rather than being almost zoomed right in on the vehicle that you're driving. And then the last one's down here, the camera movements, put these on least just so the camera isn't shaking as much when we're moving around. It says it helps with motion sickness, but honestly, it just helps with visibility because the screen isn't shaking as much. And then these last two settings, don't care, put them to whatever you want. Now, in terms of aiming, movement, and gameplay settings for both keyboard and mouse and controller, I have videos on those, which I will link down below. I'm not going to cover those in this video, but what I will announce in this video is I am now affiliated with AIM controllers. This is my official AIM controller that they sent me out, and now that I'm moving over to a bit more controller in Warzone 2, this is the best controller I've ever used. It comes with digital triggers on the back. As you can see here, I'm able to jump and put plates on with these triggers back here, and as you can hear, all of the buttons are like mouse clicks as well. If you guys are interested in picking one of these up, whether you're someone who uses a controller or is looking to transition to controller, because it's pretty strong in Warzone 2, I will also have a code in the description down below, as well as a link to go and grab yourself a controller with different percentages off, depending on how much you spend on your controller. All the details will be down below, so go and check that out. So the last things to cover in-game are audio and interface. Starting with audio, I'd recommend between PC and home theater. Don't run headphones or headphone boost, whether or not you are actually using headphones. PC is sort of like the loudness EQ or loudness equalization thing that some people do in the Windows settings, where it compresses a lot of the sound and can make some of those quiet sounds sound a bit louder and some of those louder sounds sound a bit quieter. And if you're not very good with hearing, as I'm not, because I've blasted way too much loud music in my ears for years, then this is the best option. However, if you want a kind of better high dynamic range, so less compressed but a wider soundstage, some people do prefer home theater, so pick your poison between these two. In terms of all the volumes in here, keep your gameplay music off and keep your effects volume at 100, as well as the cinematic music. These other two ones are kind of personal preference as to whether or not you find the dialogue to be useful and how loud you want other people's voice chat to be as well, but make sure you've got the effects volume maxed and your music off. There's one more setting in here that you probably should consider changing if you are playing the game through Steam rather than Battle.net, and that is the game voice channel. Now, by default, this will be at all lobby, so you can hear all the procs chat and stuff, which honestly is very useful because a lot of people don't mute themselves and you can just tell an enemy squad is near and then go kill them, which is nice. But if you're playing on Steam, having this set to all lobby will actually limit your FPS down. You'll get a lot of FPS loss, I assume due to however they are processing the audio through Steam and COD. It's weird how we all figured this out. So on Steam, if you want to gain that FPS back, you need to run this at friends only, and you'll instantly see your FPS jump up. However, if you're running the game on Battle.net, which I am now because of this exact problem, then you can put this back to all lobby and you'll have no problems. So yeah, kind of annoying. Hopefully they'll fix that soon, but I just wanted to add that in here so you guys had it covered. So the last in-game settings I want to cover are the color customization within the interface area. It overall improved the colors in your game as well as the visibility a little bit as well. So I'd recommend you set it up exactly how I've got it here. Color filter to filter to, color filter target to both, world color and interface color intensities both at 100. The colors just look a decent amount better. They pop a little bit more without needing to go and do anything external to the game. I'd recommend everyone goes and does this. The last bit to cover in this video are some config file changes. So close down your game before you go and do any of this, and then head to your documents area, open up the Call of Duty folder, then players, and then you want to find the file called options.3.cod22. You guys might not see the .cst bit because I've got my file extensions on, but you should be able to right-click this and select Edit. If not, you can come down here, you can open up a notepad, and then you can just drag and drop that file into here. Then what you want to do is you're going to be finding 3 settings which we're going to be changing. So the first one, if we come in here and search for async, so do Control F and search for async with no spaces, you're looking for this option called async compute. By default, this should be on true. Async compute is essentially a method by which the GPU and the CPU can handle processing of the game in a nice, effective way. but for whatever reason, it doesn't work out too well and actually can limit your FPS a decent amount. So it's better to actually turn this off by setting this to false. Then come all the way back up to the top, just so we can make sure we find the next setting properly. Click up there, do a Control F again, and search for clutter. Then we will find this option down here, which is Clutter Max Dist. You'll see the Clutter Max Dist currently is at 5,000. If we'd set this to short in-game, when I mentioned this earlier, this would be down at, I believe, 2,000. So that's what the game deems as a short clutter distance. But the maximum distance at which clutter models are rendered, well, the minimum you can set that is actually 100. So if you just copy this 100 here, put it in between the inverted commas, we are now achieving a setting that is even lower than what the game allows you to. And this gives you a nice FPS boost. In-game, you'll notice that there will just be a blank option next to clutter distance in the game now. Just don't go and change it in game ever from now on. And if you ever do, you'll just need to come back in here and set this back to 100. Simple. And then the last thing we need to do is search for, or actually I think it's just at the bottom. We don't even need to search for it, which makes it a bit easier. If you come all the way down to the bottom, we are looking, it's actually near async compute. We're looking for renderer worker count. And you want to set this to the number of physical cores that your CPU has. The way you can find this out is just do a quick Control-Alt-Delete, open up Task Manager, and then head over to your performance area, click on CPU, and you'll see here cores and logical processors. For me, cores is 8. That's what you want to set your number here to. In Warzone 1, I think you set it to half your cores. Some people used to set it to the number of threads. Nope, it's been tested through and thorough now. You want to set it to the number of cores, which for me is 8. Then after you've done all that, you can just save this document and close it down, and you're now ready to jump in and dominate some games. The next thing I'd recommend you do is watch this video for all of the NVIDIA control panel settings that just dial in all of what we've done in this video and just make everything run at its absolute peak performance. So go and watch that one next.